Welcome to the Mark J. Ryan Experience.
Hey everybody, it's Mark J. Ryan with the Mark J. Ryan Experience. And I'm here, got a little work going outside of my office. I've been waiting quite a long time for it to subside, but it sounds like it has now temporarily, maybe, but it may come up again. So excuse me if you hear any pounding or drilling or blowers or lawnmowers, whatever is going on. But they've been working all day and I want to get this podcast out. So anyways, it's been a little bit since I've done a podcast. It doesn't seem like that long, but from what some friends of mine and I look at the schedule, it's been since the first year since I've done a podcast. One of the things with podcasts when I've done them in the past is people would let me know and I'd get emails and things like that. But recently I don't get emails, but I find out when I go to different events or I'm talking to different people that have listened to it and just say, wow, that was great. When are you going to do another one? And I found out recently, again, more people that had enjoyed it, but just hadn't responded. And so I'm thinking, well, maybe I just need to presume that people are going to watch it and are enjoying it and they don't have to respond and just do it. So anyways, one of the people was a good friend of mine when I was recently at John Overdurf's in Atlanta. I was helping assist in filming his Trance of a Lifetime, which has been, 2012, I think. So 7-8 years, something like that. I've done more of them, but since I've, been assisting with him at this particular one in Scottsdale, which is now in Atlanta, he moved it to Atlanta, and this was the first one. So I want to make sure that I went there. This is not the first time I've been to Atlanta to his house. This is the fourth time I think I've been there, practitioner, trainer's training. Then I did a garage. So, the fourth time that I went there. And just had an incredible time. So I want to talk a little bit about that today. I want to talk about a subject which I'm going to call hacking your matrix and how the work that we're learning, the new work especially, and some of the old work and new ideas on how you can hack your matrix, how you can shift it, how you can change it, you can enter into a different place to enjoy life differently. I know I've talked about it many different times before from many aspects, and I'm going to keep circling around it because that's what I do. That's what the podcast is going to be about. And I've got a whole list of podcasts that I'm going to do and subjects I want to talk about. Some of the stuff I'm going to make more into courses and products. That's another thing. I'll talk about my website a little bit. I've done a lot of changes in that, and I've built up a membership site. Not quite done with it yet. So there's a lot of different things going on. And why don't we start with what happened, with John Overdurf at Trance of a Lifetime. So John has built a house. He had a place in Atlanta proper, and he had a place in Phoenix, north of Phoenix actually. Sold both of those he sold one and then he put the Atlanta up on the market. The first day he had an offer or two on it, so we're pretty sure it's going to be sold by this point. And in the process, he used his processing and his Beyond Goals model, which is top of line, bar none, about how it's really counterintuitive on how to get goals and how to go after goals. That's one of the models I'll be putting up as a course on my site. And he decided that they wanted to get some land and they wanted to build a house. And his wife, Kirsten, is world champion horse rider. And they had a couple horses based out of Arizona, but they would travel across the country. She retired from riding and retired her horse, and they picked up another horse there. So they decided they want to build a property with a barn, with a training site in the house, believe it or not. A loft is what he calls it. He said he's been thinking about it since he's been a young man and dreamed of having a place where he could, play his guitar and have his friends over and talk about things. And that's evolved into now pretty well doing the same thing. His friends now become his customers and his clients, which are his friends, and he brings over to his house. And he has a loft that's above the kitchen and the living room. That's a pretty big area, holds 12, 15 people comfortably, easily, up to 18, I think. And he's got all his electronic equipment up there, and then he can play his guitars and music and everything. It's a really nice place. Anyways, they decided to sell the place in Arizona, selling the place now in Atlanta, which is that's probably sold by this time, and build this farm property and make it into a training center, a special place. They didn't know exactly what it was going to evolve into. Had some basic ideas, which is part of the goal. It is more of a direction. So he had a direction. John and Kirsten had the direction of what they wanted to do with it as a farm, as a horse farm, growing farm as well. Fruits, vegetables, things like that they can actually eat, feed to the guests that are there, the people that come there, and then in the loft have some changing processes in his courses, but also taking from the hypnosis and NLP and shifting how he does that with his new processes. One of them is called a rhizomatic, and a rhizomatic is something we'll be getting into. What a rhizome is: a mushroom is a rhizome, crabgrass is a rhizome, strawberries are rhizomes. They grow different than trees. They have a whole different process, and we found out a lot of our processes in our mind and our body are more rhizomatic than they are arborescent. And by arborescent, I mean like a tree. We say we look for the root cause of something. Well, with the rhizome, there's no root cause. There's many different parts of a rhizome that work in conjunction to form something. So we'll get more into that. So they decided to take his processes and create this farm, create this training center, this place for them to live as a couple and to have a healing place, not only for himself and Kirsten and the horses, but people like you and me that go to visit him. And I went the first time about a year ago. And I stepped off, got out of the vehicle. They picked me up in Madison, Georgia, which is about an hour east of Atlanta. And I stepped off and I could just feel, it may sound crazy, but I could feel the energy of the property. And it was very soft, very nice, beautiful, quiet area, surrounded by trees, nice pastures, so many different things. Madison, Georgia is a town where I think it's the only town that Sherman did not destroy when he went down to the south. He destroyed and burned up towns and trees and, just whole communities. And because I guess he had a friend or a friend's cousin lived there, he decided he wasn't going to do that. So you got all kinds of old houses there. Antebellum, I think, is what they call them. And it's a very, very historic place. Just a wonderful community. The people there are so friendly. There's, people, especially like they come down from the East Coast, New York City, they come from LA, and the people are so friendly. They're like, why are these people talking to me? Why are they so nice? That they're not accustomed to it. It takes a little bit to get accustomed to that level of friendliness. I've lived down south before, so I've got no issue with it. I immediately jump in, and it's like, well, people that want to acknowledge who other people are and say hello to them. Anyway, so they've got a great community. The environment that they put this in is beautiful in nature. A house that really supports shifting and change with lots of beauty there as well. And had a wonderful time. I had a good friend that was also an assistant there, Paul Farrington. He's been with me for, I don't know how many years as an assistant for the Trance of a Lifetime when we were in Scottsdale, and he decided to fly down and be a part. And this was his first visit there. And John and Kirsten had a couple extra rooms, so Paul stayed in one and I stayed in the other, and just wonderful time. Every night, I don't know how he does it. The guy is full of energy, but he would cook Paul and I a gourmet meal every night. John's also a chef. So when people do the garages or the master classes, part of that process and part of that class is you get meals from him every night. Not Trance of a Lifetime or Trainer's Training or Practical Practitioner or anything like that, but the class that we were in for the master class, he did the same thing, but just to be an assistant, and when everybody else leaves, he's either prepared it during the day or first thing in the morning, or just gets to cooking as soon as he's done, and he loves it. So it's a part of the process. And then we would go late into the nights with some adult beverages and the conversation about what was happening with the people in the class, new concepts, new ideas, how to expand. It was all 10 days, a wonderful experience of watching people in the classroom change and shift and grow. And also having the same thing happen with myself. And then after everybody was gone, I was starting to edit the videos. And then by the time I got up to the part of rendering, I'd step out and join them for conversation. And sometimes we'd go late into the night, up to 2 o'clock in the morning, then get up, because the classes that John has are usually 1 to 7. So it's easy to still sleep in a little bit, have a nice day, and get up and go to class. It's a different hour schedule than I've ever been to any other seminars before. But other people that do seminars, they get there and they're used to the 9 to 5 grind or the 10 to 6, and they're uncomfortable with it at first. But I got to tell you, I don't know how many people have walked out of those seminars saying my seminars will now be 1 to 7, because it's like you're getting 2 days. You get the morning to do what you need to do. Starts in the early afternoon, goes to, from 1 o'clock to 7 to 8 o'clock, depending on what we're doing that evening. A lot of times we just John has it set up so we can plug our headphones in. Everybody in the class can plug their headphones into these headphone amps that he has around the room. And then he becomes a DJ at the end of the night and plays his different frequency music that he creates himself. And so we go through the process of, incorporating what we did that day and doing change work, and also maybe even considering some things we want to change or grow with, or mainly the stuff from the day. And then takes us through what he calls the alpha sequence process, and go through, alpha, beta, theta, delta, gamma, and his music within that. And it's a profound experience. And then, like I said, we go and I do my editing, and then we get the meal. So it's a full, rich days, having a great time. And then he's got a nice porch, so we go out and sit outside, and wonderful conversations. Anyway, so I say this to you because he's got another training that's coming up. I'm doing this. This is May 16th. And he's doing in July, he's having a trainer's training. And that you don't have to be an NLP practitioner for that. If you're doing any kind of training or any kind of speaking and you want to get better at it, John's taken all his newest stuff, plus what he knows about speaking, because he's been doing it for years. I mean, he was the lead trainer for Tad James for many years. And then he's been doing his own stuff. He goes to Europe and speaks and does trainings for 200-300 people sometimes. Works with top executives of corporations, and he's learned a lot of different things about speaking. But the new stuff that he's doing with the Rhizomatic really has a different way of connecting not only with yourself, but with the people in your audience and who you're talking to, and then how to present that information. That's the next seminar I'll be going to Atlanta to assist and be a part of and film in July. So I highly recommend, if you get a chance, to train with him. There's not a whole lot of people in the world that are really top of the line like John is, that is accessible. And my philosophy is, if you can get somebody in his caliber of training, and to not only be accessible, but to go to his house and to feel the energy of the farm and his animals and the people that are there, the racehorses, and his wife, who was world champion, the energy that she puts into the place, how she supports every day. She cleans that house before everybody comes. I mean, literally, scrubs it down. So when people come in, there's fresh flowers there. The inside of their house is completely clean, the hardwoods, the carpets and everything. And she's doing all that herself, and then putting her love and energy into it. So it's executives coming down and say, I can't believe you're doing this in your house. But at the end of it, they're like, this is the most unique training experience I've ever had. It was wonderful. It's like going to a friend's house and then going through some transitions and also learning new things and how to change. So what's coming up is the trainer's training. And like I said, you can be an NLP trainer, you can be hypnosis trainer, you can be somebody that just does presentations and wants to learn a new way of presenting, how to connect with your audience more, how to present information so it gets in at a different level. And highly recommend, if you get a chance, to come to the training. There's a few spots left in that training. If you get a chance to come to a master class, if you get a chance to come to practical practitioner, it doesn't matter. When you get the chance to train with somebody at this level, and then the way, again, the property that's there, the house, Kirsten, and what we do as the assistants, that were Paul and I, and this summertime is going to be Michael Cahill, who's a great trainer from Europe that's coming over, a good friend, just a wonderful human being. I mean, super intelligent, wonderful human, big heart. We sit there and we spend time before the class even starts saying, what kind of support do we want to give these people? What kind of training environment do we want to support so these people can really open up and go to the next level? It could be you that we're talking about. But to say, if they have this, and we know because we've done it for enough years, that as we shifted and improved ourselves and then hold that place for you to come there and to grow to the next level, the people feel it and they talk about it. So it's taking a field that was about modeling success, NLP and hypnosis, doing healing stuff, and saying, how do we model the whole process? Do we just say, okay, we've got to a certain level and we'll keep it here? No, it's constantly improving, figuring out new ways, little tweaks that we can do here and there to make the experience much better for you. So what happens at some of those classes? And this is one of the things where I was thinking, how do I present this? How do I talk about this? And what I want to do is go more into teaching. And that's why I said I've got many classes, over 100 lined up, of what I want to do for podcasts, to go into training, to kind of teach and go through some of the things that are new, that if you don't have a chance to come, or you're not sure if you want to come yet, that you can learn at home and do and improve your lives. And one of the things, the Matrix has been pretty popular since 1999. And it's really a sufficient word for what's happening, because we all have our own personal matrices. And we think that we're just born with them and that they're just there and there's not much we can do about it. And you take what you got, you take your lot, and you do your best in life. And ever since I was young, I never felt like that was correct. Like there was something more. Like I could see beyond. I'd have different experiences in my life when I was younger to go, there's something more here, and experience them and to see them. And other people didn't understand what I was talking about. I just kind of kept it to myself. And if I found other people that knew about this. And then when I got into hypnosis and NLP, I realized, and with John especially, because he also knew it. He also was playing that. He wrote a book called Dreaming Realities, where he talks about lucid dreaming, where he went into the dreams and woke up inside of his dreams and was able to volitionally do things within the dreams and learn from his own dreams to go inside there. So it's in itself, it's a matrix, and how to navigate dreaming and how to go around there. Well, once you do that, you say, what else is possible? Is there a way for me, as I navigate through dreaming, to also expand and navigate the reality that I'm looking at right here? Is this it? Or is there ways for me to interact with what I see, similar to what I would do if I could lucid dream, be awake in a dream, and then say, imagine certain things to happen in different scenarios that I could navigate and have fun with? What if we could do that with our reality right here? And if you've listened to me, you've heard me talk about this before. I want to get more into specifics now of how we do that and hacking your matrix. I like the idea of hacking because, we think computer systems are set up, and we hear about hackers hacking into the different things that we think are secure. And there's white hat hackers and there's black hat hackers. And a white hat hacker will hack into a matrix that has been attacked and locked down, and maybe somebody's having a blackmail or a threat, where a white hat will go and figure out how to get in there, stop them from doing that, and reset the matrix, or even make it more secure, shift it and change it. So while it's not exact, the analogy is the similarity that's there. So hacking your matrix. And what it's about is to test and try things a little bit differently to see what happens. In internet marketing, one of the things they say with headlines and websites is, should I do it this way or should I do it that way? And they say, yes, do it both ways. Test it. See what happens. Matter of fact, one of the guys that I was working with, I did an audio book for a gentleman recently that wrote a book about Google and using Google to he's done this before. He's done it with YouTube, but he's discovered some new things, which is kind of a white hat hack to go in there and how to make Google work better for you to rank you and things like that. I used it, and the rankings went up pretty fast, pretty quick. I was pretty impressed with what was happening. And so he was asking me what I did, and started listening to my podcast, and came back and said, dude, you got to do more of this. I just loved it. He goes, I don't care what you talk about, just talk and I'll listen. And then his name was Paul, just like Paul that was at Atlanta with me. And Paul says, I wanted to find out more about you. John had said you'd done some podcast. I didn't know you did podcast. So he'd known me for years, but didn't know I did the podcasting. Listened to it, and he says, that was really good. He goes, you've inspired me to do my own podcast. He goes, when are you going to do more? Start doing them regularly. Of course, my wife has been hounding me about that. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure what kind of response I'm getting. I don't hear back from people like I used to. Well, when I used to, it was a different type of podcast, and I was doing different things, so it was easier for people to talk back and get a hold of me. But I kept hearing from different people that had heard the podcast or heard me say, when are you going to do something new? How come you haven't done anything new? And I said, I got to do this for myself, which is one of the things we're going to get into here, hacking the matrix. And this first one is called taking 100% responsibility. And I've talked about this on some of my products. One of the products, a Ho'oponopono product that I did back in 2011. And when I was back in the mid-2000s learning about Ho'oponopono, I had actually just read a book by George Cockcroft called The Book of S, which I eventually became a publisher. And they talk about that in that book too, taking 100% responsibility. And it's really funny to hear people go in and defend the 100% responsibility, what it is, what it's about, and how we reason ourselves into not doing certain things or looking at the universe a certain way. But here's what happens when you do that. You miss a ton of data. Because our brains, one of the three premises of NLP is that we distort and we delete and we generalize information. And people go, yeah, I get that. I understand it. We do these things. But really, the more you think about how we distort and delete and generalize information, the more you learn about yourself and what you're doing. And so if you're going to hack your matrix, you got to know how you delete and what you're doing to delete information and what you're missing. I'll give you an example. I just worked with a young lady a couple hours ago, and she was going through some really tough experiences, and with her situation. And then she would get locked into fear about it. And that fear would give certain beliefs about what was possible for her future. And basically what was in her future was blank. So she's a very visual person, which means she's thinking in pictures a lot, but she had a bad feeling and then it went blank. So couldn't see a future. So there was a block. She was distorting and deleting a ton of information because there was always stuff there before. She had a different attitude. So she was she was deleting information because of a certain belief system. If we become adapted to that, and that happens all the time, where we believe things aren't possible, or that's just the way it is, or things have gone, but we have beliefs upon beliefs upon beliefs, but that determines what's allowed in. There's a whole lot more information out there. People say, the frequencies, if we look at the frequencies, the electrical frequencies in our universe, what's around us, what we're able to perceive or experience is like a grain of sand next to the Empire State Building. The Empire State Building would be the available frequencies that are out there, and the grain of sand is what we're able to perceive. But then we get it really narrows down when we're under stress. We have a tendency to go back to our limbic system, our primal brain, which when we're in fight or flight, it's only going to let us see certain things. And we're only going to be able to respond certain ways. We don't have the ability to go into our prefrontal cortex, our executive part of our mind, and make decisions. think about things, have solutions, have our normal way of thinking. And people get really stuck in that. Trauma can do this with people too, which one of the things we're going to talk about in upcoming podcasts is the trauma and how this affects and how it shifts everything. So what happens is when the idea, I say, take 100% responsibility for everything. People just freak out. What do you mean? How am I going to take responsibility for some guy over in China that's shooting somebody? And I'm going to put a link on here. There's a 15-minute video that I did on my Advanced Ho'oponopono Z Plus video that's called 100% Responsibility. That'll give you some good perspective on it. But an updated version of it, which I'm going to talk about right now, I'm trying to think the best. Let me just give it. So I had sent some research to John Overdurf, I don't know, last year sometime. And I think it was done by Rand Corporation. And what they were doing is they were studying military people and how their brains were affected for post-traumatic stress disorder. And they noticed some people had it a lot worse than others. And so they started doing some investigating, and I think it was one specific explosion in Afghanistan where people were sitting down to eat and somebody came in and blew it up and killed a bunch of people. And they were looking at the responses of the soldiers that were there, and some of them really had post-traumatic stress disorder really bad, while other ones didn't seem to have it that much. And they discovered some things. Now, I'm not saying this exact. I could go and find the studies. If you're really interested in them, let me know. But the gist of it is that what they discovered was that the people that were passively just sitting there having their lunch and at a base and not doing much of anything had the worst post-traumatic stress. The interesting thing was they found out that the people that didn't have as bad a stress were kind of like your Army Rangers, people that would go out on tours and looking for terrorists in the mountains. They were actively pursuing. So and they say, well, what can we extrapolate from that? And what they discovered was that because these trainings, these Army Rangers had, these people that would go out into the field looking actively, not passively, that there was a difference, that if they were in a frame of mind going out looking, they knew there was danger around them. Danger could come in at any time. So they were kind of prepared for it. They had learned to continue to move forward in their life with doing something actively while there was danger all around them. So they had engaged in upper part with it, more like what they call the squirrel brain. So you got your limbic system, and then you got, the brain, like the mammalian brain, the squirrel brain that's above that, which is an approach. And if you see a squirrel is pretty funny, because a squirrel's kind of going back and forth between the two brains. A squirrel will run away and then it'll go forward. It'll run away, and it's constantly like in between those brains. So if you think about that, to say, it's not a perfect analogy, but they're a metaphor. Just think about that in ourselves. Are we moving towards something? Or are we moving away from something? And what happened with the guys that were just eating lunch, they passively were not expecting anything to happen. So when it happened, they had the worst post-traumatic stress from that. But they discovered the people that were actively moving forward in their life, or actively moving forward towards the enemy to do something. They had something, they were planned every day, that they had a part of their mind that was being exercised that was prepared for something like that. And because of that kind of preparation, then entering into a higher part of the brain, they didn't have the effects from the stress. So there is that training that those people had allowed them to see where they were going and moving forward in a completely different way than those just sitting there passively and not have that preparation there. So if you think about the aspect of victim versus taking 100% responsibility, if, let's say we're the victim, this happened to me, I had no control over it. And then you have beliefs about that. They will continue to show you. I'll give you another example. Somebody I worked with yesterday. This man, he had actually taken some courses and has been doing some coaching with him. He's made some tremendous progress. Tremendous. I mean, you can really see it. And other people have said something to him. But when we got talking yesterday, what became apparent was he had a belief system that he wasn't. So I'm like, that's his name. I said, it's really obvious to me and a bunch of other people, you're changing dramatically. And he goes, yeah, he was getting feedback. However, he had a belief system inside of him that was deleting a tremendous amount of information that would not let him see that he was moving forward because he didn't believe it was possible. So that was the work that we did on the aspect of what information is he not seeing about himself because he believes that it's not possible, even though he is shifting and changing at an unconscious level and moving forward. He notices there's changes. He feels better, but that belief is filtering out the evidence that he needs to verify to him, to prove to him that he's getting better, that he's moving forward. So the belief system that he in a sense, he's not taking responsibility for the shifts and changes because he's got a belief system. It's not quite there yet. It's almost as if like a victim type belief system, and it's not allowing him to see it. So it's not an exact correlation, but what I'm saying to you, and I think you get an understanding, is that as we believe certain things, we don't see it. As we start to shift, when I work with people and they don't believe things about that things are possible, that they deserve it, and then they shift it to the point where they believe they deserve it. One of the funny things is they'll start saying, I'm gonna take a drink of water here too. One of the things that they'll start saying to me is, you know what? Hey, yeah, okay, I do remember this happening, and I do remember, and all of a sudden, from their unconscious, because they've shifted the belief system, they'll start to give me examples, and I'll say, why did you just tell me that story? And they're like, I have no idea. I'll say, think about it. What did you just tell me? Did you tell me a story of somebody that was responsible for their life or somebody that was a victim for their life? They're like, oh yeah. So they start, as they open up and shift and change those belief systems, they start to see things that are maybe not better. They're not good or bad or better. Are they useful? Are they useful beliefs that will help that person out to move forward? So now I'm going to take some Kirkland purified water here. It's not as good as the Essentia I got down. The Essentia is, and I got some Dasani too, but had a friend of us he works for Essentia, brought us a case over of this, the Essentia water. Good water if you get a chance to try it out. So one of the things that you can do, you know, if you're not doing a coaching session or you're not, and you're saying, okay, how do I do this? I'm here. How do I see this? One of the things Milton Erickson said, you can pretend anything and master it. So when you come to the 100% responsibility and you start to say, all right, maybe don't believe it 100%. Maybe I'm not fully there yet. And I've got a lot of reasons why I don't want to believe I'm 100% responsible in this life. What if I just took that on and started playing with that? How would I act differently? How would I see the world differently? What information would come in that would let me see and support that belief system, this new belief system? And that's, to me, the biggest rule number one for hacking your matrix is to take full responsibility for your matrix. And one of the things I talk about, the video that'll be attached to this, is if you're in a dream and you're sleeping and something bad happens in the dream, somebody did something really bad, maybe somebody you even know personally, you ever wake up out of a dream and be mad at that person for what they did in the dream, and maybe in reality you maybe can't help yourself, or you know somebody that said, I had a bad dream and it was about you and you did this, and they start treating them bad in reality, when in fact that person really had nothing to do with what happened in their dream. Who was that person responsible within your dream or their dream? No. So who's responsible? So if you come out of a dream and a lot of bad things that happened, who can you blame outside of the dream if it all happened within you? You got to take full responsibility for it. It came from within you. And I'm saying expand that out one more level to say, in this reality, that what if we can wake up from this dream one more level out and take full responsibility for what's going on here? And I'm not saying because it's true or it's good or it's right. I'm saying experiment with it, to hack in there, to see what happens when you start taking full responsibility for your reality. 100% full responsibility for your reality. Watch what happens. The information that starts to come in, the experiences that start to happen to you. You'll soon be convinced to start playing this game of shifting and changing your beliefs and upgrading them. A big thing you'll notice, I notice when I'm working with people, is you can always tell, like that young lady I was working with earlier today, in her body she felt very constricted. Her thoughts blank. She wasn't getting information. The minute she opens it up, she starts feeling again. She starts feeling not only her heart, but in her belly. And the belly's going to be more proactive. When you start getting belly energy, it's a doing type of an energy. So now the heart opens up, start feeling better, getting into the higher levels of the brain. You get into the doing of what's happening. The language changes, but the really cool thing that happened was she started seeing images of her future before it was blank, because it was in fear mode. And her beliefs and what she was believing about herself and about the situation would not let her see her natural state of looking at the world in a really beautiful way. But once we kind of had to break out separately and go and develop that part of where she sees into the future and the beauty that she saw there, and then bring it back into this reality. But it has to be strong enough that it's going to start to dissipate the fear, where her resources. So it's the fear, it's constricting, it's small, it's tiny. But when we start to open up, when people start to open up and they start to heal, it's one of the things they do is they start to expand. The other thing is they might go, and then the problem, they're on one hand or they're on the other hand, their problem is all there. But when they start to get integrated and it opens up and it expands, and we call it inductive type of a thinking, where they see things differently and the beauty starts coming back. It's not dark and black anymore. It's light and flowers and beauty. But their hands become symmetric. Their brains starting to work in sync back and forth in their body and their hands. So these are a lot of the different things that we'll talk about in the future that you can learn without having to come to a class. And all right, what else was I going to talk about? That's enough on that for a little bit. I think you get a sense of it. Let me see if I've covered a little bit here. So one of the things that happened with me, with John there, is I was having some things with some family members, some pretty serious things, involved hospitals and stuff like that while I was at the seminar. So some of my belief systems and I've worked and cleared a lot of stuff. So this was fairly deep that came up, and I had a recognition of it. Visually and auditorily, I was really aware, and I just went up to John. It was an exercise that the people at the seminar were going into, and it was probably going to be about an hour-long exercise. And I said, okay. And John sat down to do it. I said, listen, buddy, I said, I'm in a little bit of a place, and I got the information, but I'm kind of stuck in this, and I'd like to. He goes, sure, well, let's do it. That's what we're here for. And so we went downstairs and sat on this couch downstairs, and we started talking a little bit. And the shift that I ultimately had after a little while And he had tried different things. And I'm like, nah, it's not. And he goes, well, let's go back to some old family therapy stuff. And then he asked me the question. I was like, oh. And it did that thing. It popped and it opened up. And I saw it a completely different way. And this is probably more stuff at a genetic level. I mean, it was really, really deep, to where I didn't even realize there was another perspective, didn't even think about it. But once I got it, boom, I popped out of it. One of the things that I noticed, which this is kind of goes back into what we were just talking about, was my action towards my family members and towards those situations was I didn't want anything to do with it. I wanted to stay away from it. And in NLP, part of the meta patterns or the meta programs, what we call towards and away from. Motivational direction. Are you motivated away or motivated towards? And what I find is most of the problems are away from. But once John hit that certain point and asked me those questions and it flipped the perspective, it just, I got color that came back in because it was dark, it was constricted, it was tight in my body. But my mind opened up. I saw color, I saw pictures, and all of a sudden I was interested in going towards and helping. So it expanded, it was inductive, and it brought me towards. To me, the biggest thing I see in NLP is or one of the biggest things, one of the 2 or 3 top biggest things is, are you in a towards direction with your life and your issues and the people around you, or are you in an away from? And once you find that out, just moving to hacking your matrix, just moving from an away from, clearing an away from up and making it a towards, or letting it naturally develop into a towards, has huge implications. You see your world in a different way. Information comes in a different way. It's not so much blocked. And the reason I'm connecting this up is because the 100% responsibility, it's a towards. You're moving up into your squirrel brain. You're like those soldiers that are approaching, knowing they're approaching danger, but yet doing it anyways. And not being in a passive state, not being in a victim state, being an away from state victim. I'm away from it. I'm gonna move away from. I'm afraid. It's going inside. There's so many implications to it. So what we be doing, and what I recommend now, is to start to take 100% responsibility just to see what will happen as an exercise, to play with that and watch your brain and how many ways it's going to come up with why you shouldn't do this. And it's going to come up with all kinds of reasons of, well, what about this? I didn't do this. How can I take 100% responsibility for what's happening in a different part of the world, or when a shooting occurs, or when babies die, or anything like that? And it's not that you're responsible as you committed them, but you're responsible for how you interpret them. And if you're moving towards saying, I take responsibility for that, or take responsibility for my life, I take responsibility for my interpretations, what I'm asking you to do is to have more of a towards life, towards opening. And it's also taking responsibility for the good stuff, for the positive things that happen, knowing that you're part of that, working in that, just to see what information comes in and how it benefits you. So it's getting into the process of towards versus victim away from. So play with that for a little bit. And if you've got any questions, you want to know some more, there's different exercises, different ways that you can play with this and learn this and find out, how towards or away from you are. But I can tell you one thing, when we do the values work with people, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for where are people's away froms. And we've got a questioning method that we take people process, 3 different processes we take people through, and it fleshes out where is your highest away from. And people have a whole value system. And when you get up to their highest away from, and then you clear that and you flip that, and it starts to become a towards, those values like disappear and a whole new set of values come in. It completely shifts and changes people, and they do it on themselves. So it's kind of like the elephant in the room deal that you've heard me talk about before. If you've got an elephant in the room, you're going to plan what that room looks like, probably most likely to get away from the elephant in the room. But when the elephant leaves and there's not an away from there, it's not destroying your living room. How do you want to design your living room then if there's no elephant in it anymore? But if you have an elephant in there, that's going to be more of an away from. So you design how to live in that to stay away from the elephant. But if you clear that and it's no longer in the room, now you can look at your life. You can look at that room and say, how do I want to design it now? And you'll find that without that there, that it just brings a whole nother value system of what you want to do moving forward. And that's what happened with me with John in that living room, where this is something that's in my family and for generations. And a lot of this work is to clear that generational stuff up and to say, okay, this has been there. I want to break the chain. I want to be the one to help develop and teach other people how to break their chains, but also my daughter, my son, to say, my wife, to say, hey, do you want to break your family chain? Do you want to get in it, all the away from stuff that's been going on, the things that you do and have explained away that's generational genetic processes, and say, hey, what would it be like if it wasn't an away from, if it was a towards, if we were moving towards doing something instead of away from? Trying to keep in survival and safety and security, to start moving into freedom, which can be both an away from or towards, but then taking it to another level to maybe oneness or love or joy. How do we get into those without the elephant in the room? And when you do that, information that you never expected comes in. You see things about people that you knew and you thought were a certain way, all of a sudden look a different way. Behaviors that you used to do, you're not motivated to do anymore. It's not necessary. There's nothing triggering that behavior to happen. That line, that chain of anchors and processes and behaviors that you've done in the past, they're not being triggered anymore. New behaviors are developed. So it's really cool. We'll work more on hacking your matrix and other things that we can do. To me, the biggest one is you're away from and towards. And there's other things that we can talk about and develop in that too in the future podcasts. All right, got that, talked about that. Oh, another thing that John said that we discovered with some client work at the seminar, which was really cool, was that a lot of things that we relate to in our past are based on memories of what we happened or what we think happened or what we're close to happen. Well, what we discovered at this seminar was something pretty big with somebody that was there, that when it got down to, okay, what happened that created this? And there was nothing that happened that created with this. It was the thought of what they thought was happening that created the trauma, that created the shift. So the thinking that something was actually happening in my reality that was not happening created a significant emotional experience enough to trap them in for many years, 30 years, behavior and thoughts and belief systems based on something that never happened, but that they thought was going to happen, or it looked like it was happening. We talking more about that, but that's some pretty cool stuff. And you think about when we were kids, sometimes when we thought something was really big that was going on, and it wasn't. And what if that thing is still kind of sitting in there somewhere, causing certain behaviors or beliefs or feelings or emotions to start to come up at different times of the day, and you're not even aware of that? So part of this journey with me, and which really excites me, like the work that John did with me, is to say there's still stuff, all this, I've been doing this for 30 years, that pops up. And a friend of mine told me recently that they use me as a model for change work, and I was really blown away and impressed because she's a great trainer herself. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? And she said, the way you go after change work and how excited. I says, yeah. I said, it used to scare the heck out of me, because I identified with it as my identity. But then once I realized these are just things that are processes and patterns and parts within me that cause certain things to happen, when I start to catch them, and I can flip them or make them more useful to me and how they're going to benefit me now. Instead of just being on an automatic pilot, being a victim, I become proactive with them. And now I get excited when I discover something. It's like, yeah, let's see what happens with this one. Where can we go with this? How is this going to shift and change things? And I keep that attitude with the clients that I work with. I get excited for them because I know what's coming up. A lot of times people say, why are you so excited? I say, because I know what's coming up for you. And if you start keeping that attitude of getting excited about the shifting and the changing, what's happening? It's moving up to the higher levels of your brain where you can start to approach. It's not all away from victim status. Things are happening to me. I have no control over it. You know, that was one of the things that Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, you go through the book, and one of the things you discover was they were able to take, and he discovered this about the people that were the first to go or the ones that were dying. He noticed some patterns in it. And no matter what they did to him, it came down to the bottom line where he had said, you can't change the way I think about you. And he wasn't going to think bad about it. So from what I gather, and I could be off a little bit on this, but his deal was more about not holding it against them, not making himself, not letting them force him to think a certain way about them. He still maintained choice over that. So what he did, no matter what, was he stayed proactive in how he thought about stuff. And he said the people that became the victims and believed they didn't have any choice or power, any level of it, were the ones that, died. I'm probably bastardizing that story a little bit, but that's how I remember it. And it fits in well with this to say, it's almost, what came in was MacGyver, the old show MacGyver. I don't know if anybody has seen that, but MacGyver was a great show. No matter what situation MacGyver was in, he believed he was going to get out of it. And he improvised, kind of like those soldiers in Afghanistan that were going out and believed they were going to survive. They were going to get the enemy going on a reconnaissance and then come back. But because they were in reconnaissance mode so much, that part of their brain was active. When that guy blew that up, they then went into response and action instead of passivity of victim. And so it's moving ahead. It's going into that part of the brain and making a decision that you're going to keep and maintain control over your own stuff as much as possible. And you're going to experience less distress and stress in life. And you're going to be able to move on it from it much quicker than other people are. But I'm saying it goes farther than that, because that's in extreme situations. If you just take it in daily life and go through your life, what will be your discoveries about yourself, about life? Things that you thought, oh my gosh, I thought this. I don't even know why I thought this way. That's not even mine. But it was controlling an aspect of your life. But if you start to take 100% responsibility and take control of that again, say, no, this is mine, take responsibility for it, and what can I do with it? Be very proactive with it. Use your creative mind to come up with solutions and different ideas. And then notice what other information comes in. You'll start to see your world in a whole different way. And that's just one way of doing this. There's many, many other ways that we're going to talk about. We'll get into more specifics of how we have different belief systems about money and about careers and relationships, life in general, that aren't right or wrong. They're not good or bad. I'm just saying play with them and start to flip them around and watch what happens to the information. I'll give you some ideas and techniques on how to do that. And do it for the exercise of trying something different, just to see what happens with the information, the experiences, the feelings that you have in life. It turns into something that becomes exciting. It becomes interesting. You start to become curious, where you still might go off and you get mad and get angry and get upset. It's okay, but you recover a lot quicker. You start to become, okay, I wonder what happened there. How did that happen? Because if you study process, it's about how. How did that happen? What was my thinking going on? Oh, I remember I was doing this and I was seeing this image in my mind. And I was feeling this way, and I imagined my mom talking to me or my dad talking to me, or an old friend or whatever it was. We start to pay attention to these distinctions about our internal, external experience. And when we shift our internal experience, you'll be amazed at what changes in your behavior, but magically other people's behavior starts to change. Did it really change? I don't know. Maybe you're just seeing it different because you've changed. Anyways, I think you get an idea of it. If you want to know more about certain aspects of it, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to take a proactive stance. Remember, I talked to you about I was waiting for responses that I didn't get. And it's like, nah, be proactive. Do what you're teaching and be proactive. Just put them out there because I want to put them out there. And then let's see what happens. Let's see what happens from the audience. All right. So I've been working for probably 4 months trying to figure it out myself, and I finally hired some people to help me with it. Putting in I'm converting. My products I had most of them were DVDs, and then because technology changed, I went to downloads. People with PCs I found were able to download pretty easy, but I had a lot of trouble with people on Macs, Apple products. So I said, okay, what I'll do is I will give a lifetime access to the products. I converted them all into courses on my website. So I'm shifting up. If you want to go to markjryan.com, you can look and see I'm still in the process of shifting some things around, but I made my DVDs into courses and my downloadable products into courses. If you still want to download them, let me know and I can end up getting you the links to it. But it's real easy to go in. You'll have lifetime access to it and watch them right on the site and download the audios to listen to. And what I'm going to do is, at the end of this, the 100% responsibility, which comes from my advanced Z Plus Ho'oponopono DVD. It's a 15-minute piece, which will give you an idea of what the course page looks like. Because the free link I'll give you will be a free link to this part of the course, which is 100% responsibility. And then the coaching, shifting up the coaching a little bit, doing some new things with the coaching, and then getting into some speaking engagements. I figured this would be done fairly quick, and I got to tell you, if you're doing a course with LearnDash or MemberPress, LearnDash LMS Learning Management System, and then there's one just Kajabi. Kajabi's pretty well all done for you. You just got to, plug in place and drop. It's much easier, but you're paying a monthly fee. And we decided to hook it right up with our server and our website. But it's a pretty steep learning curve. I got to tell you, you want to talk about being proactive and going after it. Whew, boy, what a difference. But it's becoming really rewarding as I look at it. And then I've joined some other people's courses that they're using the same system, so I've gotten some really cool ideas with that. And what I want to do is continue to build these podcasts and also some specific learning that I will do, and I'll make them into courses, some of them free, some of them paid, maybe some combination of it. So if you get a chance, go over to my website, markjryan.com, take a look at it, let me know what you think, and see if anything interests you there. If you've got any ideas for courses, let me know. But other than that, I've probably got where's my list? I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 right there. That's some older products that are mostly finished, that are not finished, that I'll finish up and start putting into the courses page on my website. Now, I think I've covered most everything that I want. I usually run a little bit long. I work on trying to shorten them up a little bit and put more out. Website, I think I covered it all. Got to take it slow, meander through these things, work on putting it in some different podcast aggregates, putting them out there, and just expanding. Taking it a little bit easy on myself instead of trying to push it through and get it all done in a week or two. I'm taking my time and seeing what happens. So anyways, I'll put them out when I put them out. My goal is once a week, maybe more. If I get some ideas, I'll probably be doing mostly video. But if something comes up and I've got my recorder with me in the car and I've got an idea, I'm going to record it. I'm going to put it out on an audio and maybe just put a picture, some kind of a movie background. I've got all kinds of B-roll footage that I could put in the background and do it that way. So, summertime, starting to heat up here in Phoenix. Got up to 100 the other day, and we're going to be into the hundreds. So stay cool if you're not, and look forward to what I come out with next. Not sure where I'm going. Join me. Let's see what happens. Throw some suggestions my way. Other than that, I think some pretty exciting stuff's coming up in the list of stuff that I've got for you. This is Mark J. Ryan. Thanks for listening. Hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.